line towards another partial government shutdown. Democrats on Capitol Hill aren't backing down in their fight for more oversight on immigration agents. And Republicans aren't budging either. Tonight, we get to the point.
From Chicago's very own, with WGN political editor Taman Bradley, this is The Point.
Good evening. At midnight, the Department of Homeland Security is set to shut down. Democrats are holding out on a funding agreement because they want new guardrails on ICE. Democrats' demands include an end to roving patrols, mandatory body cams, and the unmasking of federal agents. Republicans have called that a non-starter. Another major sticking point, ICE's determination that agents can enter homes or private property without a warrant signed by a judge. Their position is agents only need a warrant signed by DHS administrators.
Unless there are really strong, meaningful reforms to rein in ICE and stop the violence, there will not be Democratic votes to fund ICE and extend the awful status quo that now exists.
Instead of allowing adequate time to negotiate on additional measures, they are threatening to shut down the Department of Homeland Security, which will get them exactly zero changes to the status quo.
Earlier this week, we talked to Republican Illinois Congressman Darren LaHood about the ongoing DHS debate. While we have you, Congressman, I wanted to touch briefly on funding for Homeland Security. Congress is facing yet another partial shutdown. The negotiations are largely happening over in the Senate, but what are you hearing from your colleagues? Are Republicans willing to bend on immigration enforcement to keep government services running?
Well, we need to do everything we can to make sure we're negotiating with our Democrat colleagues to fund the Department of Homeland Security, which includes agencies like FEMA, like TSA, like the Coast Guard. I mean, these are valuable federal employees, and we need to fund it. So I think negotiations are ongoing in the Senate with the White House. We need to find a way to get this done. We can't let this agency be shut down. And so those negotiations are ongoing. But I will tell you, I'm glad that the Department of Homeland Security implemented a new policy to have body cameras with the Department of Homeland Security. I think that's a positive step in the right direction. Obviously, after the tragedy in Minneapolis, they've removed 700 DHS personnel there. So I think those helped to dissipate some of the tension we had before. We still have a long ways to go with the legislation, but I'm not supportive of letting that agency shut down. We need them. So if we can't reach a resolution, I think we should have a continuing resolution, at least for a couple more weeks, maybe a month, until we can appropriately work out the legislation.
The Democrats say they want tighter warrant requirements, more training, and for federal agents not to wear masks. Are those reasonable asks?
Well, I have concerns about not allowing law enforcement personnel not to wear masks. Unfortunately, we've seen the targeting of law enforcement officials. We've seen it in the military when people, their identity is known, their families are targeted, their kids are targeted, and there's a campaign on social media to go after them. There's doxing that goes on. I mean, this is completely inappropriate for people that serve in law enforcement. And so I'm not supportive of that. On the warrant requirement, I'm happy to hear the Democrats' proposals on that. Obviously, we have a Fourth Amendment. As a former state and federal prosecutor, there are certain parameters that we need to have in place. But I also know that the role of law enforcement is to enforce the rule of law. And people that are a flight risk or people that commit crimes or people that are here illegally, that law enforcement has to do their job. I think there's a proper balance there. And so I'm willing to look at what they want to come up with.
To City Hall, we turn next. Mayor Brandon Johnson's budget battle with the council continues. 29 alders have formed what they're calling a budget accountability coalition to keep an eye on how the mayor is carrying out their plan. Johnson, who declined to sign the budget last December, still questions whether the plan is balanced.
There was, a real difference between how we finalize and balancing this budget. There are projections that our team has assessed that have been overly projected, and it has caused some great deal of concern, right? And implementing this budget and getting it right, that's the most important thing, and I'm doing that.
The latest sticking point is language in the budget that lifts the city's ban on video gambling terminals. Alders are counting on the legislation to bring in $6.8 million this year. And now they're trying to go around the mayor to let state officials know the city is open for business. We talked with 9th Ward Alderman Anthony Beal about that. You have come up with a plan to force Mayor Johnson to follow what City Council decided to do, and that is to put video gambling in bars and restaurants. How are you going to do it?
Well, first of all, we shouldn't have to force the mayor to implement the budget that was passed by 31 of my colleagues. We took the budget process and went through it, and part of it was to approve VGTs, video gaming terminals, throughout the city of Chicago, which we are not taking advantage of that. Right now, we're losing out on between $65 and $100 million a year by not being part of this program. So we put a modest number of $6.5 million into the budget, and all the mayor has to do is send a letter to Springfield, which he refuses to do because he's trying to repeal it. But then you have to fill that hole that we put in place, and then the budget won't be balanced. So we are, my coalition of aldermen, the 31 of us, are crafting a letter that we're going to send to Springfield, notify the gaming board that we passed this, it's been certified by the city clerk's office, and we can start accepting applications for VGT machines.
And you have the legal authority to send the letter as alders. It doesn't have to come from the mayor.
It does not have to come from the mayor. And so now we found out, we had a legal opinion that was provided to us that all we have to do is craft a letter along with the certified budget that we passed back in December, send that to the state, and they will start approving these VGT machines.
Alderman, we want to play for you what the mayor said about this today. He was asked if he supports trying to repeal the lifting of the ban today. Take a listen at what the mayor had to say.
A decision hasn't been made just yet. However, it's imperative that we get this right, especially because there are so many other levels of government that are working to address how gambling generates revenue for municipalities as well as state government.
Now, some people have public safety concerns about gambling addiction. Do you think there are enough votes to repeal lifting the ban?
Absolutely not. We passed the budget with 31 votes, and we only needed 26. We got to 31 because people saw that we were not being led by this administration in order to have a balanced budget. And so we took the ownership of the budget, me and a coalition of aldermen, and we crafted a budget that will pass muster in order to not have a downgrade with the credit rating agencies, because we saw that the mayor only he only paid half of the pension costs that he should have submitted the entire pension payment, but he did half. Our budget that we voted for said you have to make the full pension payment so we won't be downgraded. We're already on credit watch. And by him doing that, that sends the wrong message to the credit agencies. And by not signing this into law, sending it to Springfield, is not sending the right message to the credit agencies that we are going to do right by this budget. You cannot pick and choose what you want to pass and what you want to implement and not implement. We passed a budget. It is the law of the city council for the next year, and he has an obligation to fulfill that budget.
Now, as you know, the mayor says that he doesn't think that this budget is balanced and it may lead to cuts. Already some janitors have been laid off. The mayor discussed this earlier today. I want you to take a listen.
This was an exercise that, as difficult as it was an exercise that we have been forced to go through. What's interesting, though, is that the same individuals who are now raising this, even after we put forward ways in which we can streamline government, we're calling for more cuts and layoffs.
Could you have saved these jobs if you had passed Mayor Johnson's progressive revenue?
Absolutely. And we can still save those jobs even with the budget that was passed.
Absolutely. If you had passed what?
No, if the budget that was passed, those people did not have to be laid off, Tomas.
I see what you're saying.
There are several vacancies in the mayor's office right now. He could have eliminated a couple of those vacancies and protected those 9 workers. This was something that was done strategically to send a message that we're going to have to lay off. The mayor is systematically trying to set this budget up to fail so he can turn around and say, I told you so. That budget was balanced with experts within the city council, with former budget directors, former CFOs. We had a whole team of people working. We know this budget is balanced. The only thing that's not balanced is the fact that the mayor is not implementing this budget.
I've only got about 20 seconds. Do you think you're going to have to come back this summer and do another budget? The mayor says the math doesn't work.
The math doesn't work because it doesn't add up for him. If we have to come back mid-year, it's because he refuses to do the job that he was elected to do, and that is to make sure that this budget is executed, and he is not executing, but that's his job and responsibility.
We're back with more news in 60 seconds. Next week at the Illinois State House, Governor J.B. Pritzker presents his 2027 budget. His office warns that federal funding cuts are setting up a tough road ahead for the state's finances. Illinois is already anticipating a $587 million drop in revenue thanks to some provisions in President Trump's tax plan. Last month, the governor told state agencies to hold back more than $480 million in reserves. One big unknown is if the White House will be successful in freezing $1 billion in child care funding for Illinois. A judge has stopped the cuts from taking place for now. Tonight, we tip our hat to State Representative Justin Cochran. The Des Plaines lawmaker has introduced a bill that would require public high school students in Illinois attend a government meeting as part of their civics education. At The Point, we love the idea of students learning civics, but as we all know from Schoolhouse Rock, it's still just a bill. It has to be voted on before becoming law. And that is The Point. I'm Tamon Bradley. Micah and Ray are back with more news at 9 o'clock. The Forecasters is up next. Good night.